Now, next up, we have a fireside chat on the topic, how is simulation and animation redefining the future of education? With simulation and animation, students can better understand what it's like to actually be in these situations. So they're not just reading words, instead, they can see what it looks like when someone makes a particular choice. Please join me to welcome Sarah Barker, Associate Professor, Pasadena City College, and Amr Mohsen, Chairman, Hope Artificial Intelligence, Inc., with a round of applause.
Now? There we are. Hello. I think we're just waiting for a clicker, but would you like to start? Okay, yeah, soon we'll have some slides up, but hello. And I just love to start by saying I'm really honored to be here, and my mind is full with so many wonderful ideas, and my heart is also full because there's a lot of really passionate people in this room that really care about our students, and I'm just honored to be here. My name is Sarah Barker. I actually just walked away from a tenured position at Pasadena City College, as you all just heard. I taught television, radio, and film there for 14 years, and I've been teaching that for about 20 all total. Now I'm getting my PhD in media psychology. I start my dissertation in January, and I'm doing it on something called embodied cognition, and I'm bringing that in to virtual reality.
Thank you all for being with us here this afternoon. My name is Amr Mohsen. I'm the co-founder and chairman and CEO of Hope Artificial Intelligence, Inc. Hope Artificial Intelligence, Inc. is a nonprofit 501c3 company focused on bringing online education subjects that lead to professional certification issued by well-recognized high-tech companies, such as in career technical subjects that lead to professional certification issued by well-recognized high-tech companies, such as Meta, Google, Cisco, AWS, and so on. And this, with inmates, while they're in prison, in less than a year, can complete those courses, technical career courses, and get certificates. So when they're released, they can apply to get well-paying jobs.
So it looks like our slides are up, and so today we're talking about how is simulation and animation redefining education. Let's see if I can figure this out. Speaking of technology. There we go. Okay. So, well, you were just talking about, did you want to say anything else about here?
Yes. The topic of simulation and animation is a very important topic that will increase in importance in education at all levels. And mainly because students and teachers became more familiar and comfortable using advanced software and video communication and online learning and so on. And with the rapid advancement in computing technology and software capabilities, the capabilities of simulation and animation is going to become more pervasive and more accessible for students at all levels to be able to understand the complex behavior of systems that would look like abstract. However, when they're simulated and represented in an animated form, it becomes visual, it would invoke emotions, and it will also stay in their memory, and they will be able to apply it in their lives later on.
Great. And I just have to say, I was really excited that I got to do this talk with you. It was really kind of serendipitous. Here, I'll advance this a little bit. Because this is actually, if you would like to listen to my podcast, just come find me and you can scan my little tag. I'm doing a podcast right now on virtual reality in health, because there's a lot of research out there to suggest that VR is powerfully effective with PTSD, pain, depression, anxiety, and stress. But wait, there's more. There's also scores of studies that suggest that VR is a powerful mechanism to teach students. I just got my grades in a couple days ago, so I'm just coming off the end of my last semester at PCC, and I can tell you that, strictly anecdotally, but I find that a lot of my students in online classes were failing miserably. It was one of the drivers that kind of inspired me to go back to school and get a degree in media psychology. I want to understand how to prepare students to work in an environment wherein school is happening online primarily. Because what the data suggests is that students expect to be able to enroll in online classes, but data also suggests that those students don't do particularly well in those online classes. So really quickly, in case any of you are data freaks, which I'm sure probably most people in this room are data freaks, you can look at some of the studies that I personally have been doing, both qualitative and quantitative research to support VR in classroom environments. In particular, what I'm interested in looking at is a relatively new theoretical concept, comparatively speaking to others, and that's the idea of embodied cognition, this idea that humans learn by doing. We learn by rolling up our sleeves and actually getting physical, moving our bodies. So some of the research that you see up here is bringing embodied cognition into VR. So if you can imagine that you're a student and that rather than going on to a Zoom call, you drop into a VR chat room and you drop into a digital avatar. And again, I could go on forever, but that's just, it's an animated identity that you come up with. And I was going to put mine up here so you could see what mine looked like, and I forgot to do that. So imagine that you've got these students now that are in a VR chat room where they're communicating with each other via digital avatar. And particularly what I'm looking at is, what my dissertation is on, is does this improve students' sense of belonging, critical thinking skills, and engagement? And so to be continued on we'll see what I find out.
Yes. Yeah, so the use of virtual reality and augmented reality is one of the very powerful delivery and implementation of simulation and animation. And I'd like to share with you an application of the simulation and animation that we have used in the delivery of the Cisco Network Administration course at one of the prisons. And this is, some of you may know, the CCNA course is a very technical, complex course. And it involves teaching the learners what a router is, what are the switches, and how to program the router and the switches to form a network, and the various level of networks, local area networks, as well as broad areas and internet. And a lot of the concepts associated with those complex components are described and taught through the course. However, being able to put them all together to form a system and seeing it working is very important for the learner to be able to understand how the system is going to work, how to modify it, and how to debug it, and so on. And in a prison environment, those equipments are not available. And so in partnership with the Cisco Corporation, they developed a simulator called Packet Tracer. And that Packet Tracer is available on the computer. In this particular mode, our education platform is residing on the cloud, on an AWS cloud, and inmates in the classroom using PCs in the classroom with a simple browser. It's inclined PC. They can access our education platform in the cloud, which has a lot of security guardrails, so they cannot go anywhere else. And they can access the Packet Tracer. They can access all of the education material of Cisco on our platform. So they're able to put together a complex network on that simulator and program the switches and the networks and the routers and pass packets through this network and see it behaving and see any problems and figure out how to debug it. This simulation, this packet tracer simulation is very powerful because it allows inmates in a prison in a classroom that don't have access to those equipments be able to model the operation of a network. They see visually how it's working, and they memorize it better, and they gain experience. It's like almost having the equipment in their classroom. And the animation associated with representing the simulation in a visual way is very powerful. And this is only made available because of the advancement in the computing capabilities of low-cost computers, such as a laptop or a PC that's available to any learner, whether in the classroom or at home. So the slides that we're showing here is an example of a classroom, where the inmates are sitting. Each one of them has a PC, and the PC has the Hope AI education platform open, and they can click on the course, the Cisco course, and they engage in a virtual session with the subject matter expert who will be residing, in this case, is residing in Santa Clara. A professor at Mission College, it's chairman of the Computer Science and Information Technology at Mission College in Santa Clara. So he's engaged with them in a virtual session, a video session where they ask him question, he asks them question, and he guides them through the material. And this type of hybrid delivery, where they can access the material of the Cisco Network Administration in an asynchronous, self-paced way, in addition to the virtual video interaction, is a very powerful delivery because it helps the learner complete the course successfully. In this case, 100% of the inmates that started the course were able to complete it with this hybrid delivery.
And I'd love to say really quickly that in addition to all of this, there's also a lot of research to suggest, and in fact, I just found an article that they're bringing VR into prisons, and much like what you're doing with your technology, the VR platforms that they're bringing into prisons now are teaching inmates, particularly inmates who have, maybe they went into prison when they were juveniles, and they've served a life sentence, say, and now they're 30 and they're 40 and they're getting out, and they really haven't had an opportunity to maybe learn how to do their laundry, or learn how to cook, or learn how to engage with an employer or prospective hiring agent. And so the VR will take what you're doing, but the pedagogy, if you will, is just teaching how to survive in the world by creating a simulation, right? So you drop them in a digital world, a story world, you populate it with digital avatars in real time. I think the prisons that I've looked at that are using VR in this way, they're actually hiring actors who have done live immersive theater to interact with these inmates and to teach them these skills that they need to find a job when they get out, to have good relationships with other humans, and to take care of themselves. So you can bring the technology together too.
Let me show other slides here. This is a close-up of one of the inmate, with his PCs open, and you could see the Hope AI education platform, and it has the Cisco course. He can click on the Cisco course, and he can get all the material, self-paced material, as well as he can get the packet tracer, that network simulator. And the Cisco Network Academy support those courses. They developed the packet tracer, and this is an example of what can be done with simulators and animators in many area of STEM education and technical education. A well-known example of using simulator and animator is in helping pilots to learn how to fly an airplane using a simulator. They will sit in, in an environment that's similar to an aeroplane without flying, but it has all the equipments, all the gadgets, and in front of them, and they can simulate all the various environment and situation that will be encountering, winds, turbulence, and so on, and they can learn how to fly the aeroplane while they are in their office. This is this powerful technology has been used in the past in certain lab where they have large computation capabilities. However, recently, the rapid advancement in the computation capability, where the semiconductor technology continue to double the computing power, every year and a half, and reduce the cost by 30% every year, made such a computing capability available on a laptop or a PC, and be able to run such complex simulator and animator in a way that's available to every learner, whether at home or at school. And there is many examples of those type of simulator and animation that are going to be deployed, especially also with the capabilities that Sarah just mentioned, with virtual reality, which is an immersive capability, or augmented reality. And this will make available to students a very powerful way of learning complex systems that are difficult to follow just based on their abstract behavior or the expression of the equation that they follow. They'll be able to see it visually and experiment and feel the behavior of the system and be able to change it and understand how it works as if they had the whole system in real life in front of them.
Thank you. And I know this is a little bit of a departure, but in case anybody has any questions about this, I just take it back to VR in a traditional classroom again. One thing that I find frustrating for myself is that, I taught, whatever, in a school that was, most of my students were first generation, and they're working parents, they're working full time, they don't have deep pockets. And the challenge with VR today is that the cheapest head-mounted display, okay, the fancy little thing that you see people wearing, is about $300. That's Oculus Quest, which is the current lowest price point. That is way too expensive. One of the things that I'd like to do with my study, and I would love to do it in prisons,
Yes.
is these head-mounted displays are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. However, when you start getting into lower price point head-mounted displays, which you can get into for about $36, these would be similar to Google Cardboard, if any of you ever used that, right? So, the resolution's not there, and what we also know about this tech is that you're not going to experience immersion or presence, some of these technical terms that people who are studying VR talk about. You're not going to experience that yet with these cheaper head-mounted displays. And so another thing that I find challenging about VR is that if you're doing it in an online class, right, then what you can account for, right, what you cannot account for is the ecological conditions of the student, right? You don't know if that student is in a quiet space or if they've got 5 kids running in the background, right, while they're trying to, right? So there's a lot of things that we can't control about the use of VR, but I think my pain points are we got to get the price point down. We got to get the resolution better so that people aren't experiencing, it's not cyber sickness, it's actually straight up really motion sickness that people are experiencing. And, we really need to figure out a way to, if you're going to do it in the classroom, right, that's very expensive. And if any of you want to do some research, you can check out, I'm all over the place, I told you, right? So another thing you can check out, Tobii, TOBII.com. They will talk to you about how teachers can employ virtual reality technology and utilize the onboard affordances of VR to use eye tracking. And what can we use eye tracking and pupil dilation methodologies for? To figure out whether or not students are engaged. To figure out whether or not students are interested or disinterested. So there's a lot that we can do with eye tracking technology, which is a natural onboard feature of VR. Just want to point that out real fast.
I can also share with you another example of the use of the simulation and animation. Actually goes back to when I putting together the thesis for my PhD program at Caltech many years ago. And at that time, there was a new device invented called charge coupled device. And it has the potential of being used as a low noise, high sensitivity imager. And the device is very complex. It sends, the incident light, the picture in pixels. It generates a packet of electrons under every electrode proportional to the light intensity. And then the device has a clocking scheme of shifting this charge along the surface of the semiconductor chip and be collected at the end in a special sensor and then shifted outside to be displayed. The time it is a fascinating invention, however very complex. It involves how the charges are going to be moving along the interface. It involves this, solving diffusion equation and as well as electric field equations. It involves the variation of the electrodes being pulsed with different waveforms. So my PhD thesis was to model the charge transport of those electrons generated by the incident light and be able to examine the optimum clocking scheme and as well as how to optimize the charge transfer efficiency so that when the packets of electrons reach the sensor, they provide the optimum replication of the incident light. And so put together a very large simulation using finite elements and that took hours on the computer at the time. Developed a simulation of the charge as it moves along the surface and made it into a film and a movie that projected it and went to many conferences, international conferences, displaying the results. At that time, it was a breakthrough because it showed the researchers how to optimize the optimal clocking scheme in order to get maximum transfer efficiency. And the charge coupled devices went to become a household device. Every imager that you can see, either on the phone or especially used in space application because of their high sensitivity and low noise. The vehicle that went to Mars or the moon, they all use this charge coupled device utilizing this optimized clocking scheme. There was almost impossible to figure out how to optimize the clocking scheme to get the maximum charge transfer efficiency and the proper electrode structure in order to make the charge coupled device as useful, as pervasive as it has been. As a matter of fact, this particular device got the Nobel Prize back in 2008 because of how pervasive and how impactful has it been on the lives, on all of our lives. Just see how imagers are being used on our phones, at home, and how it made the replication of real life memorable. So this is an example of how simulation and animation can play a big role in solving complex systems and letting the researchers or the learners figure out how to optimize it and how to learn how to improve it and how to utilize it in the most efficient way.
That's great. That's amazing. And I'm sorry if we're a little disjointed because we kind of come from different areas, but I love the convergence. Is just awesome. I just want to say one thing that sounds like a complete non sequitur, but for those of you who are interested in utilizing virtual technology, virtual reality technology, there's another way that I'm very excited about bringing VR into the educational landscape. And I'm going to tell you about something else that you, all you fellow researching geeks will appreciate. Maybe write this down. The Proteus effect. So what is the Proteus effect? The Proteus effect is a phenomenon that happens in human psychology when a human being embodies a digital avatar and they begin to identify with the digital avatar so much that it actually changes their real life behavior. So where am I going with this? They actually took, there's a lot of research, well, I'm all over the place. There's a lot of research out there, once again, that you can find on your own, that shows that when you take young people, and by the way, you need to be careful with how young, because if you put children into VR, this is not a good idea. At a certain point, they can't discern the difference between virtual reality and reality. So that's a little bit dangerous. You can do your own research on that. But if you put them in there, right, and they're an appropriate age, they can discern the difference between reality and virtual reality, then you can actually teach them empathy. And again, there's a lot of research to support this once again. Bringing it back to the prison system. Recent study about, 4 or 5 years ago. Again, you can do your own research. They took men who were incarcerated for extreme spousal abuse. Sorry, trigger warning here, but okay. And they put these inmates on an 8-week VR protocol. And this is called exposure therapy, by the way. Sort of. It's kind of the reverse of exposure therapy. But we use exposure therapy in VR when we're working with people who suffer from PTSD. Okay. So what they did is they took these people and they put them into a domestic home-looking VR world. Okay, just look like a virtual house in a space that's virtual, and they put them in the body of a very small female digital avatar. What do you think happened? Anybody? 8-week protocol. They felt vulnerable. And and again, it's been a while since I've read this study, but there were measurable improvements in behavior. Okay, so there's a lot of ways that we can use VR also to teach our children and our young adults, right? And I hate this term, but soft skills, right? Or emotional intelligence, and particularly when you're in a situation. Because when I think about COVID, I don't think about, well, where are we now? For me personally, it's like, well, I'm bad at cussing, I have to be careful. Man, this is gonna happen again. And what are we gonna do next time to be more ready, right? Well, if you're trying to teach students things like this and they're stuck in their house, you better find some way to create a real space for them to learn these skills. Yeah.
One other areas that is gonna also witness impact of simulator and animators, especially using the immersive technologies, is going to be in STEM education. Where a lot of the courses, whether in physics or chemistry or biology, either in high school or in colleges, they involve a lot of lab works. And in the past, most of that lab work had to be restricted, had to be limited to be done in a laboratory in the colleges or the school with limited attendance and limited period where the students have access to it. With simulator and animators, this can be the student can be able to have access to those experiments anytime, anywhere, using variations and making different mixes, seeing the result and interact with it real time in a way that has not been possible in the past. And the outcome of this is that the proficiency and the quality of having students come at the same level of competence, it's going to be really significant in the STEM education.
Thank you so much. Would you mind, I would love it if we could go back a slide, because I would love to address what you just said about STEM education and simulation. And there's a study that I want, can we just go back a couple more? Keep going. There, okay. So you were talking about using VR in STEM. One of these articles, I think it's Jang. Yeah. So, and if it's not Jang, you can do your own research once again. They were using VR to teach students how the inner ear works. And when I remember when I was, you have to learn all these names of parts of your ear and all the things. So what they did is they put these students who were really struggling with this concept, and they put them in a VR environment utilizing embodied cognition, and again, you can do your own research to see what that means. And they assess their critical thinking skills before and after. And the idea of being in the inner ear, right? Because the VR story world was you're inside the human ear. Okay, so these students are inside the human ear, and they're learning about the human ear. And man, that just really did it for them. So yeah, what VR can do and simulation can do for STEM subjects is remarkable. And again, you can do your own research. It's being used in astrology, astronomy. It's a really phenomenal technology for STEM subjects.
Another example of where the simulation and animation technology is being used is in semiconductor, in designing a device, a semiconductor device, as well as designing the process steps to make it a device, and then the circuits. The iPhone that we are using now every day, they have chips that have 30 billion transistors. Imagine 30 billion transistors interacting with each other. In order to build such complex chip, simulation is used in order to verify the operation of those transistors in different blocks. Blocks is a memory, a processor, an interface, and a transmitter, and so on. All of those blocks are simulated, and tons of test vectors are run against millions of test vectors are run against the chip before it's being made. And this simulation and the animation of its performance, of the input-output performance of the devices is crucial, because processing that chip would take many months and it would cost millions of dollars, and they cannot, the developer cannot iterate the design of those chips by making the chip, testing it, and then modifying it and testing it and so on. It has to be properly simulated, and the input-output has to be properly presented in an animated way, and that might take a few months, but it will save years in the development of those complex chips.
What do you think? Should we open it? I think we have about 10 minutes. Should we see if anybody has any questions? Or is there anything? Okay. Does anybody have any questions? We'd love to hear from you. Okay. Thank you. Yay.
Thank you, by the way. A lot of alignment. Sonia Toledo from Dignity of Children. A lot of alignment in what my beliefs are. So I just want to talk more about how do we get teachers to understand the process of experiential learning with STEM than just, concept learning. How do we merge the two to have STEM actually be live?
That's a very, very good point. Especially in STEM, where the abstract concepts are sometimes difficult for students to remember, mm-hmm. to understand, and especially if some of those abstract concepts work together. Yeah. And that's where simulation and animation can make a big difference. Yeah. Because the teacher quite often struggles with how to explain it. However, having that simulation done and providing the output of that simulation in an animated way, in a visual way, and changing the boundary condition, the input condition, and seeing the output change, this visual interface result in a memorable impression by the learners, by the students. Mm-hmm. They relate to it, and they can figure out, how to use it better, and they will memorize it better. So now the availability of simulator and animator is made possible, as I mentioned earlier, because of the rapid exponential increase in computation power and again, the rapid decrease in cost to make it available to every learner and every student, on his laptop or on his iPad. And that exponential, increase in computation power is expected to continue over the next, 15, 20 years, to the point that what will be available on a handheld device is going to, be equivalent to what is being done in a large, computing facility a few years ago. And that's where the simulation and animation becomes so powerful, because it brings a lot of the abstract concepts of science, at the hand and the fingertip of a student, so that they can relate it better and figure out how to use it in real life.
Yeah. Do we got time for one
Can
more
I also
question?
can I also respond to that? Because I think you asked, how can we get teachers on board? Was that your question?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I would recommend is, I think they need to see it for themselves. Because we're kind of talking about two different things, right? We're talking about embodied cognition, which is separate from VR, and that's just this idea that when you're teaching students and you actually have them move, like some of the research that's not up here, but for instance, there's lots of research to suggest that when we're talking back to our teachers and colleagues and we're gesturing, that it actually helps us cognate, right? So I think that how you get teachers to sign up for this is to put them in a VR headset.
Yes.
So they can really experience the immersion, the complete immersion, and they can experience firsthand how radical this is. Because you can't, to me, it's like meditation. Mm-hmm. You can't explain the benefits of meditation. The only way you can know what they are is to meditate. Yeah. And I think that that's kind of what needs to happen here. And so I would really encourage you to go on Amazon, and you can find some headsets for as little as $19. And if you can write a grant or get your college to purchase enough of those to just give out to students in lieu of a textbook, create your own VR chat room in a traditional classroom, and just every once in a while just say, hey, today we're going to be in VR chat. Everybody get out your phones, get out your headset. Today class is in VR chat. And I think that, when people there's still a lot of fear, I'm finding, around VR, just like we were afraid of taking pictures, like it's going to steal our soul, right?
Yes.
There's still a lot of that going on with VR. And that's logical. I mean, there's still a lot of problems with VR. Right. But I'm, as you can tell, I'm very excited about it. And I think if you get teachers into it, they'll see how exciting it is too.
It's interesting because that's what I do. I teach teachers. And, I'm going to stop saying that and be more of coaching teachers, because, this conference spoke a lot about AI and VI and technology. And one of my biggest concern is the algorithm is not in alignment with our Black and brown children. And I'm really concerned that we are throwing stuff into the classroom without understanding if our children are still going to be penalized for some of their differences.
Is it okay if I speak to that again real quick? No, this is such a salient, wow. The first time I went into VR chat, and I am not exaggerating, within 5 minutes, I heard the N-word dropped about 6, 7 times. So there is no question. I believe that the metaverse is one of the most racist places I've experienced.
Yes.
As someone who goes into the metaverse. I don't go into metaverse, but I use VR. So this is why I'm a big proponent of VR chat.
Okay.
Because you can make a private room that no one can come into except for those students. And I would encourage you to do that, because to go into any random VR chat room, you're asking to get triggered. I mean, it's a volatile place for women. Mm-hmm. This is my opinion now. There's a lot going on there. You can hide behind a DA, right? You can't get your butt kicked for that. So I would encourage you to just use VR chat, make a private room. Nobody has access to it but you and the students. It's an absolutely 100% virtual safe space. And that would be my recommendation.
Right. And I think, I appreciate that, because I was even thinking, it's like, oh yeah, I'll do it with teachers so they could experience it, so then they could turnkey it, which is what my methods are. what I'm concerned about is how do we, we're having major issues with social media and our young people, but just considering how do we make sure that we safeguard our young people, or, brown and black young people.
Yeah, let me add to this here, because yeah, I've been in the technology field for the last 40 years plus, and the rapid exponential evolution of technology and its impact on our life is really outstanding. Back in the 80s, everybody was impressed with the PC. In the 90s, we had the access of the internet. After that came the cell phone, and then came the iPhone, where somebody who just with a device in his pocket can access information that in the past you had to go solve it. With so-called democratization of technology and information is going to become more pervasive in such a way, exponentially looking over the next 10 to 20 years.
Yes.
As a result of this, with so-called democratization of technology and information is going to become more pervasive in such a way that any learner, anywhere in the world, of any color skin, will be able to develop and invent and have access to information that we probably couldn't have imagined 40, 50 years ago.
Yes.
And that will open up the door for innovation, will open up the door for applying this powerful technology in our life in a way that we probably don't comprehend it right now. I mean, 20 years ago, most people wouldn't expect to be able to see, people across the world and talk to them in a video interaction in real time. I think, in the future, it's going to be in a 3D, perspective. There's going to be, this immersive technology, integrated with real life. There are so many things that we just have to be open-minded in terms of the impact of the future evolution of technology in our lives, and also, encourage, the next generation to get into STEM and science, and utilize all of those capabilities to come up with and invent new devices that will make our life, more enjoyable and more efficient.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I know we're out of time, right? I think we're out of time. Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you.